All right, as Dak Prescott likes to say, here we go. Talking Ball live with Pat Leonard. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for being patient. Thanks for joining me at a bit of a later time than we typically do this on Thursday nights. The Talking Ball live with Pat Leonard live chat, talking about Giants, talking about, well, I have Saquon Barkley's picture with the Eagles logo as the header for the chat just to get people going about talking about really one of the bigger stories of the week. And we were going to lead into, the NFL draft quarterbacks. I want to tease an interview I just did with the great Phil Simms about just this subject: Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Brian Burns and his addition, and which quarterback the Giants might take in the draft. But we're now going to start on the topic of whether Drew Lock is going to be the Giants' week one starter. And is he here to replace Daniel Jones? Because John Schneider, the Seattle Seahawks general manager, let the cat out of the bag on the radio today here on March 14th, 2024, and said that Drew Lock signed with the Giants because the Giants basically sold him on the opportunity to compete to be the starting quarterback. Now, this is 100% true. I just had multiple conversations today with league sources about just this. In fact, the words that were said to me directly were, Drew signed in New York because they told him he had a chance to start. So almost verbatim to what John Schneider said. Now, this seemingly confirms the Mike Lombardi report previously about Daniel Jones being behind schedule injury-wise, but it also maybe reinforces the Rich Eisen report that the Giants are done with Daniel Jones. Now, done with Daniel Jones, does that mean for this season in week one right away? Does it mean his starting job is indeed up for grabs when he's healthy? Or does it still only mean that when they draft a rookie quarterback, he will head on his way out and they're going to phase Daniel Jones out after year two of his contract extension? So that's what we're going to talk about here. Clearly the headline. I'm going to have to go in after we finish this chat and update everything about how I'm advertising this to the fans jumping on the PL on NFL YouTube page to watch the rewind if they haven't participated here tonight, because this is more than buzzworthy. This is flipping the Giants on their heads. And think about this. This is in less than a week. We have had Saquon Barkley going to the Philadelphia Eagles. We've had Brian Burns getting acquired in a trade and being paid essentially the moon, nearly $90 million or $90 million in the first 3 years of his deal, essentially. And now we have the question of whether Daniel Jones, who the Giants keep saying is on track and is our starter, whether he's even going to be the Giants quarterback in 2024. And Mark Sullivan, who was extremely supportive last chat, checks in again to set a great example for what we do here with the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard live chat. Super chats and super stickers. If you pay for a super chat or a super sticker, you get elevated straight to the top of the queue, and I will address your question and comment first. And then I see Joel checking in with $5 as well. I'll go right back up to the top when I am done, but we're going to address those comments right away. We appreciate the support. If you're not buying a super chat or super sticker, I will still get to your comments and to your questions. I will still address them in time, in order. And remember, if you're not going to purchase a super chat or super sticker, no problem. Just hit that like button, the thumbs up button. We always appreciate that here on the channel. Just you guys being here is something that I say this every week, but I'm going to keep saying it because I mean it. I look forward to these, and I look forward to them more and more as we continue to go and as the Giants news continues to ramp up. First, going to tell you about Bet Online, and then I'm going to get right to Mark and Joel, and we'll go down the queue, and we'll talk about quarterbacks, Brian Burns, Giants, whatever you guys want to do. All right. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. With up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends, you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or mobile devices. Head to BetOnline today to become part of the team, and remember to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Have a sip of my Guinness out of my Notre Dame glass here. Cheers to all of you. And off we go. Mark Sullivan, Pat, explain to me why Brian Burns, bring me off the ledge. Okay. Why Brian Burns for $28.2 million per and a second and a fifth versus Huff for $17 million and no picks. Cheers. So, Mark, great question. Great question to kick us off here. The Giants were in on Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff reinforced that, reiterated that, confirmed that at his press conference today, being introduced by the Eagles. Interestingly enough, he said he's going to wear number 0 for the Eagles. So you're going to have Brian Burns wearing 0 in New York and Bryce Huff, a guy that the Giants also pursued, wearing 0 down in Philly. Now, Huff has never been a full-time player, but, I was talking to some people just today in the league calling him an elite, that was the word, pass rusher that one person used. And the Giants pursuing him obviously meant if they landed Bryce Huff, they weren't going to be giving out those 2 massive contracts to those 2 players. One wouldn't think, given the cap space, that they already are in a crunch after making some of these signings, especially Burns, the biggest splash. Mark, I think this is indicative of the Giants pursuing the top-end pass rushers and being in on all of those big names, but especially these 2 guys who were younger and maybe still ascending. Like Danielle Hunter was a player I knew they liked, but clearly they valued youth and trying to make a guy a part of the developmental process and the system and the long-term plan, more so than getting a guy like Hunter, who is, I believe, late 20s, 28, I think he is. But Huff at a better value would have been a smarter, more sensible signing and a less expensive one. Now, Burns, and again, I teased, I have a chat coming out with Phil Simms. We did an hour on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. That'll be on my feed on Spotify and Apple on Friday, March 15th, as well as here on the YouTube channel. So can't wait for you guys to see that. You might be a little bit disappointed about what he says about the quarterbacks in the NFL draft with the Giants, but he gives great breakdowns of the quarterback coming out of college. His critique of Daniel Jones is great. He gives a review of Drew Lock as a quarterback, and he honestly, praises Brian Burns. So a lot to dive into there. But Mark, I think if you're Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, this is a reflection of the desperation they were acting with. Because let's be honest, even if you like Brian Burns as a player, like I wrote this for the Daily News, but I talked to multiple people, numerous league sources. Anyone you talk to who works with the salary cap, player signings, player deals, teams, agent side, etc., people consider the Brian Burns contract an overpay. Now, when you have cap space to use, if you go get a great player, if he turns out to be great, no one goes and looks up his cap hit when he's dominating games and you're winning. So, that's how it is always with big contracts, right? If it works out, no one's going to complain he's making the 28.2, the 141, that he has a chance to get to 150 and all that. But if it doesn't work out, this is where you look exactly back at a question like Mark's. And Mark, again, great question to start us off, where the Giants were in on another young player who the Eagles, the Giants, and they were one of, I think he listed 5 or 6 or 7 teams today when he was talking about how the Eagles landed him. And Huff said, listen, this is why winning begets winning sometimes and losing begets losing. And listen, the Eagles faltered badly last season, obviously. But he said that the fact that they've had guys there who have won, the culture they've built, the expectations, the high ceiling for the team, the high floor for the team as he sees it, and that's where the Giants, even if they're in those markets, it's harder right now, whether it was recruiting a defensive coordinator to come here or whether it's recruiting a defensive end to come here, those are challenging things. So Burns was a guy that ended up acquiring via trade and, frankly, Mark, overpaying once you're losing out on a guy like Huff. So you're paying more to land the big splash pass rusher after losing out on another guy who is not as he's not as established as a well-rounded player. Huff has been a liability in the run during his career. He has gotten better at it and worked at it. But you're getting a more well-rounded player for more money after missing out on one. So we'll see how it works out. I know the Giants are excited about Burns, but I hope that answers your question. Joel says, Pat, do you know if the Giants have asked Evan Neal to cross-train at guard in the offseason, especially now with Jermaine Illuminor signing? I know that that's been a conversation. I do know, Joel, that Evan Neal understands where this sits. On the one hand, the Giants, after his ankle injury was misdiagnosed. Evan Neal had a fracture in his foot, and doctors determined initially it was a sprain. So he was let down by that misdiagnosis in the second half of the year. Didn't end up getting back on the field. Wasn't able to get back and maybe get some good football under his belt before he got to this second offseason and regrouped. And so the Giants, from their side and their standpoint and their side of things, they owe Evan Neal the chance to not only for him to get healthy and to help him get healthy, but then he needs to do the mental reset. But they want to give him one more chance to play this tackle job, in part because he's a young player. He's a number 7 overall pick of this regime. They want/need him to work out there. But also, he wasn't done right in the second half of the season with that misdiagnosis on his ankle, just telling the truth. So he's going to get the chance to win and lock down that tackle job. This is my understanding. However, it is well known that there will be contingencies if he doesn't win that. Because let's face it, if he doesn't win that job and plays very poorly in training camp, that's going to mean that the Giants are then going to have concerns about, can he be that swing tackle? Because Illuminor really is here to be the reliable veteran swing tackle that if Neal struggles or Thomas struggles or goes down, you have a veteran who you can trust more than the guys that they were putting in the game behind them when they got hurt or struggled last season, right? So, we don't have to revisit all those mistakes. So that's my understanding of that situation, Joel. But Evan Neal, this is the flip side. Evan Neal, when he came out and said, like, I'm a tackle, I was born to be a tackle, essentially saying, like, guard's not for me, was kind of read between the lines, or, is essentially what he said. As a young player, like, it's good to be confident. It's good to want to play the more premium position, believe you can do it. Obviously, he did it for 2 seasons in college, one on either side. But for Evan Neal, he has to be the kind of player right now that, yes, you have pride, but also wherever you end up playing, you just got to put great football on the field. That's where he's at. But in fairness to him, a lot of frustration for a lot of different reasons from last season that he was dealing with at that time. So I think it's healthy for Evan to embrace, to compete for the tackle job. Hopefully he wins it. If he doesn't, embrace the fact that you can contribute in other ways. Because like we've said, we talked to Justin Pugh about it directly, a teammate who felt like he could be comfortable on the left side, whether it's, left guard. Like Pugh thinks that he could do that and that might be a good fit. And I thought it was interesting. John Runyon Jr. said at his introductory Zoom press conference today that he prefers left guard. He played right guard for the Packers last year, but he prefers left guard. Now, who knows where he ends up playing? My guess is he ends up at left guard if that's his preference. But for the Giants right now, you have options, right? Illuminor has played guard at times. He's more of a tackle, but you have guys with versatility now, can play different sides, can play different positions. So I think Carmen Brasillo is somebody to really zero in on because he got a lot out of that Raiders line last year. And I think the Giants are excited about what he can do for them now. Thank you for those super chats. Hunter, good evening. Hunter says, I am not a fan of that Jack Stoll signing with or without Waller. Don't see him making the roster. Yeah, no offense to Jack Stoll, but, that's in the class of, middle to back of the pack roster, like depth signings where, those are guys that you need to create, that you need to chip in on special teams, to be excellent blockers, right? Helping in pass protection, doing some of the dirty work, right? Like you're not signing a guy like Jack Stoll to erupt in your passing game on your offense. He's a piece, he's a complement, but that's not a solution at tight end, no doubt. Savage Steve, what's up, Savage? He says, who seems to be the name of the quarterbacks that you heard circling or attached to the Giants? There are so many rumors that the Giants really want to trade up, apparently. Yeah, I saw Albert Breer say that the Giants, recently had made calls to those top teams. I would say there is a thought that maybe the Patriots with signing Brissett, that they'd still draft a quarterback somewhere, but that the number 3 pick really could be for sale. I mean, I'm like you, Steve, where even as many people as I'm talking to, like your head starts spinning a little bit with the amount of, you're thinking, is that real or is that a smoke screen? Is that real or is that a smoke screen? And half the time you feel like you might be getting them both wrong. That's a smoke screen, but that's the truth. And it might be the opposite. So you always have to remember who you're talking to, who's telling you what. I do think, the names that we've honed in on up top, if the Giants go quarterback, I do think, a Drake May, a JJ McCarthy. JJ probably, for me, is more of a back of first round guy, but he's probably not there if you're waiting there. So I guess Drake May right now emerges to me. Like if the Giants are drafting a guy high, he's the guy. But there are some people you talk to who think that the Giants would go QB, but not in round 1 or not with that number 6 overall pick. Maybe they trade up into the back of the first. Maybe they go with a mid-round developing guy. Then they have Drew Lock, and Daniel Jones, which we're going to get back to that. But Steve, I have no doubt in my mind the Giants are drafting a quarterback. I just don't know who, I don't know where, but let's just be clear here. As far as I understand, it's going to be Caleb Williams, number 1 to the Bears, Jaden Daniels, number 2 to Washington, and then the draft starts. That's how I see it. And I think that's how a lot of people are starting to see it. And I would say this, some matches that I feel like make sense, having some conversations. You got Bo Nix and the Broncos make a lot of sense. JJ McCarthy and the Vikings make a lot of sense. And, if the Giants can take advantage of teams charging up for quarterbacks to get, one of these premium receivers, premium players, and still get a good developmental quarterback in what Joe Shane has called an especially deep quarterback class, that might be the route to go. But I know that's not what Giants fans want to hear. I know that's not what you want to hear. But to me, Steve, right now, Drake May, Bo Nix is a guy. Listen, when I've seen him in person, I haven't been wowed, but NFL people love him. And he was in a quarterback, centric offense, a lot on his plate. And Steve, I would say to this, you should tune in and listen to my podcast with Phil when I post it tomorrow on Friday, because Phil gets really into the weeds on all this. And I think it's really instructive and interesting. Although, like I said, Giants fans might be disappointed in kind of his final conclusion. Rick Bowman says, bring the heat, Pat. You got it, Rick. You got it. Michael says, good evening. What's up, Michael? What's up, Hunter? Hunter says, I like the reports of Drew Lock being able to compete for the starting job. That's why he signed here. Isn't that fascinating? It's really interesting that, and listen, this reinforces the idea of why Russell Wilson was in the building in the first place, right? Why did Russell Wilson visit the Giants? He visited the Giants because he thought there was a conversation to be had about whether he was going to start. And let's just put it on the table. Russell Wilson would be a Giant if the Giants handed him the starting job, right? Wouldn't he? I mean, the reason he's not a Giant clearly is because they told him there was a competition, but they wouldn't guarantee it, right? So I think we're putting the pieces together here, Hunter. Russell Wilson saw there was a chance. They had the conversation. He leaves, goes to Pittsburgh. He wasn't guaranteed a job. He was guaranteed a chance to compete for the job. Drew Lock, a different player, different type of ego, guy at a different point in his career, decides a competition for the starting job is just what he needs. We'll get back into the queue. But we have more super chats, and I'm going to get right to it after another sip of Guinness. Ladies and gentlemen, Remember, if you purchase a super chat or super sticker, your comment, question, opinion gets addressed, answered immediately. Mark Sullivan again. Thank you, Mark. Huge supporter of the show. Mark says, here's one. If one general manager wants to trade up, does the other GM ask who they're going to pick? Would it be bad form if the guy lies or no honor among thieves? Mark, really good question. Two from you. So that depends on what market the two general managers are in for. A lot of times that kind of thing is being discussed. It's not uncommon for a team to say, we're coming up for this guy. Like, that does happen. Not always, but that is something that happens. Especially when, like, let's say it's a really tight window in the trade. Let's say I'm picking at number 5 and you're picking at number 7, right? And so I have a player at a certain position I want. And like, let's say I want a corner and you're trading up from 7 to 5 and I'm moving back from 5 to 7. If I think the team at 6 also is taking a corner and there's 2 top corners, I want to know from the team at number 7 while we're talking about that deal, are you coming up for one of these top 2 corners? Because if you are, I don't want to go there. Like, I want to get the value from what you're giving me to only move back 2 spots, and you're giving me all this extra draft capital, but I'm drafting a corner here. Think of like when Pat Surtain and J.C. Horn, right? That drafted, whatever it is. So if you were a team that wants a corner in that spot, let's say I'm the Giants there and you're the Bears or whatever, I'm 5 and you're 7. I'm saying, sure, you can come from 7 to 5 if you're coming for that lineman or that quarterback, but not if you're coming for that corner, because the Titans at 6, I'm just picking names out of a hat, I know they're going corner. So I don't want to get traded out of my preferred position and my preferred cluster of players here and then end up with more picks, but we're all looking at each other because we didn't get the player we wanted. Dad Hat Daddy with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Dad Hat. Pat, give me something. Just yesterday, I heard Justin Fields was in play. Is that still true, or did the Bears want too much on the trade? In play for the Giants? That would be unusual. So if the Giants brought Justin Fields in, though, you'd have Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Justin Fields, and let's face it, a rookie quarterback. No, I don't think I haven't heard that's not happening, but that doesn't make any sense to me. I think if Drew Lock hadn't been signed, Justin Fields, you could talk about, well, the Bears have no market. Can the Giants get him for a song? But no, not with Drew Lock in the fold. All right, let's see. Antonio says, are the Giants interested in adding a corner? Yeah, they know they have to. They just need to, like, right now, the market, there's some bigger veteran names on there, but they're older players. Again, the Giants are not a winning team, so it's not like you can just recruit anybody to come here. Top end guys, like veterans deeper into their careers. Like, if they're going to take a veteran deal to go somewhere and play for a year, they're trying to win Super Bowls more often than not. So that makes it tough. Like, I've been out the last couple of hours. I don't think like a Patrick Peterson has signed in the last few hours. I didn't see, but just guys like that, those are guys who are trying to hook on to, like, the Chiefs and the Bills and the 49ers and, stuff like that. But the Giants are in that market. They know they need a corner. Yeah, for sure. Antonio says, have you heard anything on Waller's retirement decision, whether it is leaning a certain way? No update there other than I still think he retires in the end, but no. Jacob says, do we go after a running back in the draft or free agency? Jacob, I think it's still possible, another running back in free agency and a running back in the middle to late rounds in the draft. Bucky Irving from Oregon. I love the kid. I know Marshawn Lloyd from USC is a guy the Giants like. And, A.J. Dillon, I think, re-signed with the Packers just a little while ago. But, Devin Singletary is a good player. He can help you on all three downs. He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. He's a good player. But people in the league, even those who like him, say, make him a part of your backfield, a compliment. I mean, the Giants are certainly giving him starter money in what they view to be starter money for a running back. But, you need to have a team of running backs there. It's not just like leaning on him the way you're used to leaning on Saquon in New York. Let's see. Savage Steve says Brian Bird's addition can help unlock this pass rush finally. Yeah, I mean, that's not only the hope, that's what it needs to do, right? That's what Brian Bird needs to do. But, Steve, I think an interesting point to this now is you and I both know the Giants, even last year when Wink's defense was wreaking havoc and forcing turnovers and, using exotic blitzes to keep the Giants in games, they still weren't stopping the run well enough, even with the kind of season Bobby Okereke had and McFadden played well early on. But right now, the Giants are still not a defense. They have to prove they can stop the run. They need to be able to prove it. And so the pass rush is more exciting with Burns. No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, they're going to hopefully be able to rely more on the 4-man pass rush, play coverage in the back, keep the ball in front of them. But they're going to need to stop the run. Jacob says, smack that like and sub button for Pat. Jacob, thank you as always for those recommendations and reminders. What he's talking about is hit the thumbs up button. Whether you purchase a super chat or super sticker or not, you can still hit the like. What that does too is that tells YouTube that we're live, we're going, we're cooking, and it brings other people to us. And it helps the algorithm, it helps traffic, and it brings more people to this community, which is continuing to grow. I believe we're just under 1,500 subscribers on the page now. And I promise I have more offerings coming. I keep teasing that. We have the podcast, Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast everywhere, Apple, Spotify. We have the video podcast here and the YouTube channel, PL on NFL. I got YouTube shorts going with news updates on the Giants every day. We're on TikTok and Instagram on PL on NFL. I'm on X, P Leonard, NYDN, Threads, PL on NFL. All kinds of stuff like that. Maybe not on TikTok soon if it gets banned. We'll see. But appreciate that, Jacob. Really appreciate that. Another sip of beer. We're running low here. All right. Jacob said, Pat, I heard rumors about his injury money anyway. We sit him so his insurance doesn't kick in. You're talking about Daniel Jones. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because there is extra money tied to, because this is what happens in contracts. Sometimes the money tied to player contracts on guarantees is not guaranteed for everything. So you could have something as a player, it's called skill injury cap, okay? And if you have money guaranteed for skill, injury, and cap, that is fully guaranteed money. You're getting that money, no question about it. But sometimes you have money guaranteed only for injury or only for skill and cap, but not for injury, right? I think it's Brian Burns' third year of his deal. Half or part of his salary is guaranteed for injury. The other part's guaranteed for skill, injury, cap. And it all comes together as fully guaranteed if he's on the roster by the 5th day of the league year. There's so much that goes into these contracts. But Daniel Jones has some money tied, connected to injury guarantees in his contract. Sounds like that's something you want more information on. So I will look more into that, or, refresh my memory on all the exact details of that. Maybe put something in the New York Daily News, and we could talk more about it on Monday on the next live chat as well, when I get my hands on back on all those informations. I have the contract right here, but that is definitely something to kind of expand on as we talk. I've seen reports the Giants are interested in adding another back in free agency near the minimum. Have you heard the same thing? Yes. Jacob says, with those rumors, Pat, does that seem to take quarterback at 6 off the table? Jacob, there is some thought that the Drew Lock competition to start conversation does indicate more so that the Giants are slow playing this, really treating it like a long-term build, going to add a position player there at 6 still get a young quarterback in the mix in the second or third round and get him developing and, continue to work that, then get Daniel Jones off your books eventually and keep turning this into the long-term rebuild that Joe Shane was promised it would be and continues to say it should be. So there is a thought of that. But here's what I keep saying, Jacob. As long as the Giants are in the quarterback market in the draft, they're in it. Like, until we find out they're out of it, they're in it. And so you're not going to convince me they're not going quarterback high until it happens, or until I get strong intel that I would bring directly to you that it won't happen. Antonio says, are the Giants interested in Micah Hyde, who has familiarity with Dable and Shane with a need at safety? Haven't heard anything specific, but I do think the Bills' ties make sense. So say we trade up with Patriots, for example, 6 and a few seconds or something. Could we also trade Daniel Jones to them, like a salary dump? Patriots get a bridge quarterback for a year. We get him off the books this year. Hunter, you know what's funny? Someone suggested to me earlier in the offseason that the Giants could offload Daniel Jones and salary dump. But what they said was that it would require trading back. So essentially, who wants that contract? He's coming off the injury. He's got 2 knee injuries. But if you move back, you're giving a team a higher pick to take him off your hands. Now, who wants to trade out of the number 6 pick just to lose a player? Now, that wouldn't be the only thing involved. But I think that's something maybe for me to dive back into, because, if Drew Lock's here to compete for the starting spot, how's Daniel Jones reacting to that? What does that mean for his future with the team, his near future with the team? Hunter, you're thinking on the right wavelength, starring that comment. Mart says Lock, like RE, the Lock competing to be the starter story. Is it actually possible that Daniel Jones' neck condition is bad enough to potentially keep him out this year, and the Giants don't want that information out before the draft? Martz, here's what I would say. Daniel has still not revealed why he had surgery on his neck a couple of years ago. The Giants never revealed it. Daniel's never revealed it. The Giants and Daniel Jones both said he was on track to be their week 1 starter. And now we hear reports that that's not true. So do I think it's possible they're concealing information like that? 100% possible. Yes, 100%. And anybody who thinks that I'm being negative if I say something like that, that's not being negative. That's being cynical based on my experience and based on the reality of how the NFL and the world work. That's just a reality of where it goes. A lot of times the stories I end up writing are things that other people aren't even paying attention to. And often when they hear it, their first thought is, that's an agenda, or that's not true, or whatever it is. Just because you didn't think of it doesn't mean it's not true. Just because it doesn't reflect well on somebody that you may like or have a high opinion of doesn't mean it's not true. And so, Martz, I'm just saying all of that to couch my answer, because I'm not saying that's true because I want that to be true. I'm saying that's possible. I'm acknowledging the possibility of I think that's an intelligent, hypothetical. Is that, I don't know if that's the case, but I'll tell you this. I know the Giants are concerned about his injuries, and that it's not the knee, it's the neck. And to be honest, any of us running an NFL team, if you said, hey, by the way, the quarterback you have, he's had 2 severe neck injuries in the last couple of years, and he might be 1 away from his career being over. What would you do, right? Hey, Doug, what's up? Doug says, do you expect Brian Burns and or Kayvon to work with Andre Patterson? Ed Valentine previously said that Kayvon only worked with Wilkins under Wink. I think they were outside linebackers. Makes sense that they were working with edge rushers, outside linebackers. Drew Wilkins is an excellent coach. I don't know if they are shifting rooms in that sense. I would still think it would be like a collaboration. They're still collaborative staff work going on. But I would say this, Doug, and I'll say this as directly as I can. Going from Drew Wilkins to Andre Patterson, I think the question and that comment seemed to imply that the players would be better off with Wilkins not being their coach. And I don't think that's a fair implication at all, or an accurate one. Nova says Saquon's apology feels forced. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think he needed to apologize. Frankly, I've been waiting for the Giants to post something saying, thank you, Saquon. Like, it's interesting to me that Saquon felt like he had to do it. I haven't seen the Giants say, hey, thanks, Saquon, for the 6 years and for, being a diplomatic leader when we, held your feet to the fire. So, I don't think that was necessary. Mark Sullivan says, FYI, Bryce Huff's PFF rating was 79.7 and Burns was 73.8. Yeah, Huff is an explosive, elite pass rusher. I mean, if you had one down to get to the quarterback between Huff and Burns, I think there's a lot of people out there who would take Huff on that one. But like I said, Burns, frankly, Huff has just needed to continue to improve against the run. But that's interesting. Thanks, Mark. Jacob says, with Seattle getting Sam Howell, how do you think that impacts Michael Penix? Could he fall to the second round? Yeah, that's possible, especially with the injury history. I think the second round's always been on the table for him. I just continue to come back to Penix just being an elite thrower of the football. I mean, every time I watch him throw, he's the best quarterback I'm watching on the field, Senior Bowl, Combine, whatever it is. So, the injury history is something serious, but at some point it's like, what are we doing? Not taking this guy. So I think he still ends up going pretty high. Second round is possible though, given the risk. Dixie, I'm not saying that full name. I need another sip of Guinness on that one. You thought you were going to get me. Admit it. You're impressed. I didn't say that name. You're impressed. Admit you're impressed. Neighbors or Adunze? Neighbors. Jacob Petruzzi says, Pat, you watch college hoops? I'm a big UConn fan. I grew up on a lot of basketball, Jacob. I love basketball. I tend to do this. Like when I'm involved in a lot of sports. Like I play sports, I coach sports, I watch a lot of sports. But when I cover a league or a sport, I really zero in on it, like really big time. Like when I covered the NHL, it was tunnel vision. You're on the road every week, you're on the road 4, 5, 6 days in a row, and you're immersed in it. And so that's what I do with the NFL, especially with it essentially being like a year-round enterprise. So the short answer to your question is no, I do not watch as much college basketball as I would like, but with the tournament coming around here and the conference championship tournaments and all that, I'm into that. Obviously Notre Dame fan, graduated from Notre Dame in 2006. So, Mike Bray not being there anymore, changing in the guard. Hopefully ND continues to get on the up and up there. But I'll say this, Jacob, the old Big East tournament at the Madison Square Garden is my favorite sporting event of all time. Like I used to go there as a fan. I covered it when I was a student. I covered it after I got out of school. The Big East tournament at the old Madison Square Garden, you get the beer with the pretzel rod and the handle. Nothing better than that, man. Nothing better than that. Jacob says, how close were we getting to Huff? What was the money difference between us and the Eagles? Well, as you can see, Jacob, the Giants didn't mind paying for a pass rusher. So, they overpaid for one. No, it was about the team too. It was about the team. And Huff said that today. The chance to win, that kind of thing. B-Dog says, I want Giants to draft a running back in the third. Yeah, it's a possibility. Hunter says, I'm glad we didn't touch Calvin Ridley. Did we talk to him at all? Well, that's not in the Giants' price range for a receiver. I did hear today, who was it? Lombardi, who said, I listen to a ton of podcasts, but some of my favorite, like I listen to Lombardi's podcast all the time. John Middlecoff's really good. Jordan Ronan's Breaking Big Blue, doing the Giants is really good. What else do I listen to? Cowherd's good, but I'm consuming all this NFL content. So if I'm referencing certain guys a couple times or whatever it is, like I'm listening to this stuff when I'm not on the phone and texting or calling, like I'm listening to that stuff. And I heard him say something about if somebody called the Buffalo Bills about Stephon Diggs, they would listen. I thought that was interesting. But obviously the Giants have already expended some draft capital. Oh, let me ask you guys this. If the Giants had to dip into next year's first round pick in a trade, like let's say trade up for a quarterback, and I'm not saying that's what it would cost, but obviously if they're going from 6 to 3, the price seems to be essentially be 3 2s. But they already got rid of a 2. But like if you had to dip into next year's first round, whether it was in a trade for a primetime player or an up for the quarterback, would you do it? Like, would you do it? This is a poll I want to run probably on X, just because it's not that no one said that to me, but just I know the Giants are looking into everything. We already saw Shane's going to wheel and deal if he has to get a big time player. I just think dipping into next year's first round could mean you could be trading one of the top 3 picks in the draft. And I hate to say that. I know Giants fans don't want to hear that, but I mean, how high is that pick going to be next year? Right. So I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. Joey B, what's going on? I'm on the back in Montego Bay, smoking and listening in. Joey B, my man, always bringing it. No news on Waller. Mark says, Pat, didn't know the G-Man hosed Neil. Thanks for breaking the news. Yeah, so I broke that in December that his ankle had been misdiagnosed. And so it was diagnosed as a sprain. It was actually a fracture, and they were rehabbing it as a sprain. And so all the things they were doing from all the way to getting him in pads and running like real drills and getting him on the field and doing some, fairly strenuous work, trying to ramp up to playing. And it ended up setting him back, and they ended up going in and double checking, and it turned out, yep, it was a fracture instead. So not good. Antonio says, are the Giants interested in adding another guard like Kevin Zeitler or Dalton Reisner? I know they're interested in guards in the draft, Antonio. I think to get a guard now, you'd have to get him at the right price because the Giants already are coming in at pretty tight against the cap, and they're going to have to get to Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence restructures most likely to free some space. So they'd really be on the bargain bin for guards, I would think. I don't know, what Zeitler would get, but Kevin's, I don't know. I don't know what they would get. I wouldn't think that Reisner and Zeitler would be players that you could get for, next to nothing, like veteran minimums, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But, I think they gotta work with that, as far as use the draft to supplement what they've done in free agency, but certainly they can't be done on the offensive line, I think is what you're getting at, Antonio, which is a fair point. G-Men, what's up? Brett says, Evan Neal just needs a yoga mat and Ninja Warrior training, agility and flexibility. Brett, I love it. Starring that comment 80 times. That was great. G-Men says, did you see Dan Duggan's tweet? I think you're talking about the Drew Lock, Daniel Jones stuff. I did. Good find by Dan. I retweeted Jordan at first because I was away from my phone and that was the first tweet I saw on it. So I retweeted it, telling people that I had heard the same thing. And then I noticed like a couple of minutes later that Dan had reported it first, like 40 minutes before. So I wasn't aware, but once I saw that, I gave Dan credit for that because I hate when people do that. G-Men says, I know Jack Stoll may get some heat. He was ranked as the 4th best blocking tight end in the league, according to PFF. Just finished watching some film on him. Blocks like a beast. Yeah, so that's what I was saying. You get a tight end like that for special teams and blocking ability. That's why you go get him. Not solving your tight end problem, but helping you in some areas you need it. Jacob says, rumor is if Daniels goes 2, Patriots go Marvin Harrison Jr. or trade out. Have you heard those rumors, Pat? Yes. Also, Mike Reese, who I trust implicitly on the Patriots, did a big thing coming out of the combine on Marvin Harrison Jr. and how he could end up being the pick for the Patriots if they go the route of just taking the best player available and don't trade out. And Mike is a guy you should follow. He is excellent. Hunter says, if J.J. McCarthy is on the QB board, it would be an awful idea to take him at 6. Trade down, get some capital, or like you said, take a guy at 6, then trade up to the late to get in the late 1. I agree. No Fields to Giants rumors. No. Brett says, hey, Pat, what happened to Chris Myrick? Is he done since his hand injury? I know Chris was rehabbing that. I believe he was getting healthy, but it just didn't end up working out. Chris is a great guy. Really like Chris a lot. But unfortunately, it was kind of one of those things that he was sidelined and then just didn't become a part of things after that. But I'll check in on him because I'm curious about that as well. Trade down with Broncos and get Surtain, or Vikings and take JJ. Bandit, don't hate it. What if you trade down, dump Daniel Jones in the trade, Drew Lock's your starter, draft your own quarterback in the trade down? Jacob says, Pat, with the cornerbacks going, any shot Adoree comes back super cheap? I guess that's a possibility. I mean, I didn't get the feeling talking to the Giants decision makers that was a route that they were going to go. Dad Hat says, let me grab my beer, my man. Brett M says, Guinness and a French onion soup. So good. Yes. Cheers, Brett. Simmons to safety. Justin Simmons is expensive. Leave the race says Justin Fields is going to the Broncos. Authentic, what's going on? Authentic, big time supporter of the live chat. Appreciate you. Snead is going to be traded tomorrow. Then Hollywood Brown is going to be signed. Look at leave the race all over it. Mark Sullivan says older pros will wait for injuries to contenders to sign. No camp and chance for a title. That's right. Yeah. Guys certainly choosing the route of avoiding camp if they can. And if they have the clout and the ability and the status, right, all those things, and if they know one of those guys is coming for them. Leave the race as Singletary, Boston Scott, and Eric Gray will be fine. Eric Gray, I mean, no guarantee Eric Gray is going to be anything for the Giants. I mean, that was not a good pick, and you need to see more from him. Boston Scott, though, I like the Boston Scott idea, the giant killer. Just like get him off the Eagles and on your team so he can't destroy you. I love it. Yep, Hunter's on that too. Daniel says if the NFL likes him more than the media, why did no GM go to Bo Nix's pro day? First of all, some of the general managers, if you saw, they were completing some free agent stuff and they were doing some press conferences. Like Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, for example, in Minnesota. They're traveling around, but some of them are also in the facilities getting some deals done with premium free agent signings, that kind of thing. Also, they've seen these guys now, like these teams were at the Senior Bowl interviewing these guys in person, getting them on the board. Same with the NFL Combine. They send coaches, let's say, to a pro day, and then they're going to bring them back into their buildings. They're going to take them out to dinner. They're going to do all that. Daniel, sometimes some of that stuff involved is smoke screens and not trying to tip your hand. But like one thing we've seen from Joe Schoen is that usually where he spends his time is where he ends up going. Like, he's targeted about how he spends his time. So I do feel like when we start seeing where Joe Schoen is, so it's not the same for every GM or that kind of thing, but where we see Joe Schoen matters. Hunter says, did the Giants ever reach out for Desmond Ridder or Sam Howell? Washington, Sam Howell, that wasn't going to happen. Desmond Ridder, not a good quarterback. Michael says they should Mark Sullivan checked in. I missed that super chat. Mark, sorry about that. Mark said Pat, glad to hear you're not a homer. Truth first. Thanks, Mark. Hunter said Keenan Allen traded to Bears for a fourth. Did that just happen? Oh, interesting. According to Jay Glazer. Wow, that's interesting. I like that. Keenan Allen, one of the most underrated players in the league. And when I say underrated, I don't mean. Oh, I just realized I forgot to add your guys' comments to the chat on screen today. I will get to that. I knew I forgot something. Always forget one thing. It's always one thing. Another sip of Guinness there. Thanks for that tip on the Keenan Allen, and thanks for those chats and stickers, guys. All right, let's get back into the queue. We have. They should just move back a few spots and get Penix. Might be able to get him in the second round. In addition to my trade, Danny, to the Patriots, could we throw a pick away, essentially pay a team to take the pick, maybe a future fourth or something? I don't know how that works. Getting in the weeds there, Hunter. Doug says, another thing related to Daniel Jones' contract, do all the original incentives and escalators apply this year and future years? Let's look that up. Let's look that up right now. I'm going to keep answering some questions, but Doug, I'll get you that answer in a second. I have the contract document here. All right. Jay Fed says, why draft another injury-prone quarterback in Penix? Draft wide receiver at 6th and a quarterback second or third round. Yep. No, I see that. I see that as a possibility. Hunter says, I'm over the Saquon stuff. Moved on. Glad to have him in New York for 6 years. Made it more enjoyable. I'm not going to throw away the good. Yeah, I think that's mature. I think that's a mature take. I think anybody talking about how much everyone is hurt by this and all that, I mean, get a grip. Like this is the real world. It's professional sports. Like, stop it. Gonna give all you guys some love here for the super chats here because I forgot to earlier. All right, who we got up next? We have G-Man Hurt says, is there any particular reason why the team has not fully introduced Shane Bowen to the press and the fan base? Good question, G-Man. See, when I ask that, fans say, like, if I point out he still hasn't talked and we're talking these free agents and where's the defensive coordinator, people say, oh, what are you doing? Why are you trying to stir stuff up? But you asked that question. G-Man says, are they afraid of the press asking about the Wink debacle? G-Man. Thinking. I remember when they hired Jason Garrett as their offensive coordinator. I don't think we talked to him for like 6 months. Like the first time we talked to him was in training camp or something. It was ridiculous. Not to mention, the Giants did a bunch of Zooms for their free agents. Like, I want to meet people in person. I want to make it feel big. I want to, like the way that, listen, the Eagles didn't let non-Philadelphia media into these press conferences today, Saquon and these guys, which is complete Bush League. But, they did it in person. Like the Giants doing it on Zoom, like Brian Burns. You're giving the guy almost $30 million a year. Can we have an in-person press conference? Like it's warranted. It's warranted when guys are, on big time contracts like that. All right, let's see. I'm going to get that Daniel Jones answer in a second. Brett M says, thanks, Saquon, for getting the handoff a split second before the guy already in the backfield did. Fast hands. That's right. Savage Steve says, Shane says that Daniel's been throwing. Do you think he had a setback or a potential re-injury? I guess that's a possibility if they're acting a little bit differently. I didn't hear anything about that, but like we said, they wouldn't necessarily reveal that. All right, so the Daniel Jones performance incentives and escalators, They run from 2023 to 2026 in the contract. So all the escalators in his contract, they go through all of those different seasons as far as where he ranks in yards and touchdown passes and all of those things. So to answer your question, I think that was Doug. Saquon showed he's a fake and a fraud, says JFed. Giants paid him over $40 million. He turned down $331 reportedly. If he wanted to be in New York, he'd be here. He chose the bag, didn't care where. Well, like I've reported, JFed, he initially, he didn't appreciate that their initial offers, the Giants had under 20 million total guaranteed. So he ended up getting 26 million guaranteed from the Eagles, plus almost 11 from the Giants. So he's getting essentially 36 million guaranteed in 3 years total taking this deal, rather than the Giants deal. Like initially it would have been under 20 guaranteed. I think the most he would have gotten was 23 on the offer the Giants made him. So smart business decision. Also, JFed, I know this is not a Giant friendly comment here, but let's just be honest. When a guy has a short career window like Saquon, and he tries hard to be a leader of a team that's trying to dig itself out, and then eventually it becomes, is this cycle ever going to end? At a certain point it becomes, I need to go somewhere where maybe I have a better chance to win and also try to maximize my value where I still have that window. So I don't think it's fair to blame a player for doing something like that, especially when the Giants didn't give him a chance to test the market last year. He wanted to test the market and they didn't let him. I think last year what he ideally wanted to do was go test the market and come back to them and just force their hand to a little bit more money. I don't think it would have been contentious if that happened, frankly. I think he would have signed a multi-year deal with the Giants if that had happened. The Giants had the tag. They used it. It was their prerogative, but it soured with the way they handled it. And here we are. Hunter says that report about Dak, I think, could really derail the Cowboys season before it ever started, especially when they are trying to extend him. Yeah, apparently 2 lawsuits against Dak right now. I saw that. So distractions in Dallas and not many player signings. They got to get a couple players done, but obviously controversy around their quarterback can create major distractions. Patrick says, what quarterback will be available to draft at 6? Maybe Drake May, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy. If you say that one team might trade over 6 to get a quarterback, right, then maybe one of those 3 isn't there. But 2 of those 3, I think at least, would be available there. So then it's a question of how much do you love them. G-Man says, Pat, I know it could sound crazy to people. Is there a chance Beckham comes back to the Giants? He's getting older. It could be his last year. He could come back to finish his career as a Giant. My guess and informed opinion is that he would rather win at this point. But we do know they discussed last year, and depending on what his market is, it could be the best, ride off into the sunset that Odell could ask for. So I wouldn't take it completely off the table. But, Saquon, his guy's gone. Shep's going to be gone, you would think, or at least, maybe he's working in the organization, but he's not playing for him. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know where that's going to go. But, the same personalities that he would have been sharing a locker room with aren't there anymore that are traditionally, or that would make him most comfortable back home. Doug says, do the conditions of the Giants' 5th round pick in the Brian, do you know the conditions of the 5th round pick in the Brian Burns trade? The official transcript listed it as conditional. No, I do not. I do not at the moment. I intend to get to the bottom of that. Let's see. I'm going to see if I have that information here in one of the documents somebody shot me over today as well. Let's see. All right, now I'm going to have to get to the bottom of that, but thank you for that question, Doug. I'm going to start that one. JFed says, don't trade next year's 1 for a quarterback to move up. Mark says, only trade that pick for a quarterback they love. Hunter says, I would love to see how much we actually gave up, but seconds only. Jacob says, I would dip into next year's draft for Jaden Daniels. Mark says, so the G-men literally shot themselves in the foot with Neil. Yeah, that's right. Brett M says, I'm keeping first round next year no matter what. Neil needed a second and third opinion. Brett, he was misdiagnosed. That's what happened. Hunter says, so does that mean no Justin Pugh? Hope he's back. He's been our biggest advocate the last few weeks. I think Pugh wants to be a major contributor on a team. So, like, he would be a great guy to have back. But I don't think, talking to him, he doesn't want to just, like, be hanging around as a backup and veteran and a rah-rah glue guy. Like, he can still play. He believes he can still play. And he wants to join a team that's going to put him in a place to help lift them to, to hopefully a championship. Like, he's towards the end of his career, and that's what he wants to do. So he loves it here. He loves it with the Giants. So it's not out of the question. But, Ben Bredesen to me makes more sense as a guy who they might bring back and, continue to keep in the rotation, especially with the center flex. But we'll see. Worth checking in on soon. Jacob says, have you heard anything about the Giants and Christian Hayes, the guard out of UConn, probably a second or third round guy, or Powers Johnson from Oregon? Not specifically, but Jacob, I know they're heavy in the guard market. Okay, yeah, Rick saying that Keenan Allen to Chicago. Yeah, Keenan is so good. I mean, one of the best route runners in the league, hands down. Joey B says, what's your idea on everything in a timeline fashion, and what do you think we do at draft and season predictions and after season predictions? Whoa, that is open-ended, Joey B. I think I said this on U Stadium. They had me on at the Combine doing an interview, and they asked me to give like a hot take, and I said that I thought this would be Brian Daboll's last year as the coach, and that the Giants would struggle. I mean, obviously the Brian Burns trade is a big swing, so that's happened in the interim. But just not a lot to feel confident about right now. You need to see the results on the field. Like, we need to see the results on the field. So I think it's just important to keep in mind when you see these moves, like the Brian Burns overpay and that kind of thing. Look at it from the vantage point of how bad it got with the Giants last season, how badly they need to show some progress, and then everything kind of falls into place. Jacob says, are there any times you're getting different info than other beat reporters, and how do you all decipher which information is accurate? Well, Jacob, what I find is it's most important to do your own work. So you certainly see when your competitors report things. And let's just face it, there are some people in the media, when they report something, it's true. There's some people, if they report it, you see it, you hear it, but you're not sure, or there's some people where you hear it and you're like, well, I know where that's coming from. So there's an agenda behind that, right? There's all of that. So I think of and interpret things the same way you guys do as fans, looking at different reports. But to me, the most important thing for me, because it's my job, is to bring direct, truthful information to the fan base that I have tracked down myself, right? Done my own work, used those sources, vetted the information, and brought it to you guys so that I know that what I'm telling you is ironclad. And in my job, a lot of times, sometimes when you're in my job, it's easy to try to play catch up on everything that you like. Let's say I break a story or I get a piece of news, but then I lose out on two. Like, I used to chase them all. Like, okay, try to catch up on everything, and you confirm things if they're big, obviously on your own, but like, you start to realize, okay, in a beat, and this is something that Larry Brooks at the Post actually taught me when we were on the Rangers beat together, is, it's okay for you to have your sources and someone else to have theirs and the third reporter to have theirs. And, I write my story, you write yours, and she or he writes theirs. And the next day, if you read all three of our stories, maybe you're getting a pretty good full composite picture of what's going on in the locker room or with the team or in the front office or whatever it is. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. Staying in your lane, so to speak, trusting the process that works for you, And I can't believe I just said trust the process. I've been around sports too long. But I guess it's a long-winded way of explaining that I think I've found more of an even-keeled stability and peace to the way I do the job on a daily basis by just trying to bring my work to you and to the fan bases and to the Giants fan base and the beat and my NFL columns, rather than trying to spread myself so thin and plug all the holes in the wall when really you're just not becoming an expert in anything. Let's see. What about Isaiah Simmons? Yeah, I don't think so, but someone should pick him up. I thought what Wink did with him last year was great. Jacob says, was Drew Lock our number one guy, and were the other quarterbacks just out of our price range? I mean, I know they were showing interest in Jameis Winston. They talked to Russell Wilson. I mean, he was the first guy, obviously, they brought in. So, but no, I think it's more important to understand that they were looking for a quarterback to compete, to play in real games and have the job. So now we got to get to the bottom of exactly what's going on with Daniel. Mark Sullivan says Chris Sims is a good quarterback predictor on ranks. Yep. No, Chris is very good. Michael says, any chance the Giants bring back OBJ? Yeah, it's interesting. You guys want that, I guess, huh? Interesting. Jacob says, are the 30 visits typically spread out between guys you like early draft, mid-draft, etc.? Sometimes it can be by position, so that, the building kind of hones in on exactly what they're looking at medical-wise, do the comparisons that way. It's also based around the pro days as well and guys' schedules, because remember, they got to go all over the country for this stuff. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Those are a couple of them. Stewart says, is there any way Giants could reach for Daniels? Stewart, I don't think so, because the Commanders are their division rival. And, he's pretty much the consensus second best quarterback in the draft, from what I understand. So it's not impossible. I don't know 100%, but it's hard to find somebody who doesn't think he's going to go to the Commanders. And it's just a bad thing for the Giants that their division rival sitting there at 2 in desperate need of a quarterback. And they just traded Sam Howell and they signed Marcus Mariota. So which quarterback do you think they're bringing in, right, to be in that room with Mariota, with Cliff Kingsbury? I mean, based on a guy who drafted Kyler Murray number 1, like he's obviously, I mean, it's screaming Jaden Daniels from the rooftops, right? OBJ probably going to the Eagles to play with Saquon, says John. Wouldn't rule it out, man. Wouldn't rule it out. Hunter says if we could somehow get Mike Williams for cheap, we would love that. Giants are super wary right now of injured players because they've been unable to keep their team healthy for a long time. And so now they're, should be aware of that every year, but you can see the guys they're bringing in are more durable. Rich S says Guinness, my kind of guy. That's right. Mustan JMS says, does that mean the Chargers can take Neighbors at the fifth pick now? Indeed it does. Yes, without Keenan Allen there, they clearly need receivers. It's funny because some people thought that they would go offensive line because of the way Harbaugh likes to build teams. But the premier position players in this draft at the top are those wide receivers. So that's well said. Way to connect the dots there, Mustan. Mark says, rank Williams, Penix, Nix, JJ bunched together at 2-4, then May, number 5, a clear 5th below the others. So that's you. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you left out Daniels, but I hear you. Stir it. That's right. Hunter says, don't remind me of Jason Garrett. That was a low point, and we have had a lot of those. Stewart says, do you think there's any serious interest in Daniels from the front office? Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I think the Giants would love LSU's offense to just take it and put it on their field. But tune into my podcast with Phil Sims when I publish it on Friday about Jaden Daniels and his possible fit, based on arm strength, mobility, etc. Hunter says, what could the penalty be if the Eagles tampered with Saquon? Penn State coach is dumb for saying that. Usually it's like a draft pick and money, some combination of that. Savage Steve says, let's say hypothetical if the so Hunter, I think it's sometimes it'll be like a couple $100,000 and a draft pick, like a mid-round pick or something like that, or a late round pick, mid to late. Steve says, let's say a hypothetical if the Patriots trade for Fields, would the Giants trade before the draft? I think, listen, we're going to be in Orlando soon for the NFL owners meetings in the last week of March. And that's when the Jets made their trade up. Now, Joe Shane did say earlier this offseason that he remembered the Bills were still knee deep in all their quarterback stuff then. And he implied that that was still pretty early to make a trade. But I think in this case, trading up to 3 means essentially, it's essentially like trading up to 1. If you have the same intel like Joe Shane that I do, that listen, these first 2 teams are taking these top 2 quarterbacks, so the draft essentially starts at 3. Maybe Joe Shane does have enough of his evaluation done at that point to move up to the number 3 pick and go get his guy. But that was just some context there. But the Jets made that trade up for Darnold for that pick in the 2018 draft when we were actually in Orlando at the owners meetings, so about a month out. Mustan says, I can't blame Saquon. We have sucked every year except one. Good for him to go to a team ready to win now. Stinks it's the Eagles. Hunter says he should go. Odell should play in Kansas City. Also, I'm upset we let Isaiah Hodgins walk. Liked him a lot in the short time we had him. Yeah, for some reason, even though Joe Shane and Brian Dable brought him in, and that was like a success and a hit of theirs, bringing a guy in from Buffalo, it just never became something that they celebrated. Hunter, I'm let's see. Bill says Justin doesn't want to play anywhere else. He's made that clear. It's Giants or finance. Talking about Fields? Dadhead says he probably about to sign with the Eagles tomorrow. Kyler Saunders says clearly Chicago isn't going to draft Caleb and is going for Harrison. Looks like Washington gets Caleb. Mark my words. But Kyler, who's going to be their quarterback? Fields? I mean, that would be a colossal mistake. They'd all get fired. Hunter says Hollywood Brown Chiefs signed. Oh, interesting. Hold on. Let me add him to my fantasy team real quick. Look at you guys breaking the news to me when we're on here. Love it. Thanks so much for all the support. Remember, super chats and super stickers. You purchase that, you go right to the top of the thread. We do these twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. Thinking about just pushing the Monday ones to 9 p.m. as well, because I think people seem to respond to the nighttime, the prime time. Let me know if you think that's a good idea, because we've been doing Mondays at noon and Thursdays at 9. But let me know what you think there. And then Twitter is P Leonard NYDN, and I'm on all my other social media channels: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, at PL on NFL, Threads as well. Hollywood Brown definitely on my fantasy team. All right. Jacob says, is there tension between Dable? Excuse me. Is there tension between Dable and some reporters? For example, him and Ronan. I think you can tell there's some tension between Dable and a lot of people, namely his coaching staff, but certainly he seems like at times in press conferences like he's about to burst. Joey B says, how do you think this defense will do with a new defensive coordinator and personnel and scheme? I don't think it's going to be very good, Joe, but they're going to be able to make some splash plays here and there. I just think the simpler scheme, people act like that's going to benefit them. I'm not necessarily sure. I think part of the reason the defense forced so many turnovers and played well under Martindale last year, it was actually, even blitzing more than he normally typically would to compensate for, the issues on the roster and the fact that they couldn't stop certain things. So they had to create a big play. The team wasn't scoring a lot. So we'll see if it works. Going with like the 4-man pass rush and keeping things in front of you and playing more zone. That's more of like what Buffalo does with Sean McDermott. I'm skeptical. Burns obviously is a huge piece to add, so you can't ignore that. You have Burns in the mix now. Bobby was great at linebacker last year. But they have to address the secondary. They don't have top-end talent across the board. They don't have depth. I think it's going to be tough. Joey B says, I don't like Saquon in Philly, but I respect it. You will never see me wear a Saquon shirt or jersey in public again, though. I mean, no reason for you to do it, but I just think you can't, people who are nasty to him about this, stop. Hunter says, trust the process is some Philadelphia Sixers type stuff. And honestly, Hunter, like so many coaches say stuff like that now too, like in the NFL, whatever it is, whether it's trust the process or stick with the process, right? Quarterbacks always saying that. I'm just starting to spit back all the nonsense I'm hearing. Not to spend too much time on Eagles, but most media coverage talks about closing the gap between the rest of the division. Well, the Eagles definitely finished really badly last year. Yeah, they finished 1-6. Why should we think they're going to be any better? No, John, I think you make a fair point, and that's something I'm going to star your comments here because I think you make a fair point. That's, are we sure the Eagles aren't going to continue to be a mess? Like, we don't know that, Saquon also mentioned he wanted to be close to family, which is part of the reason he signed in Philly. They had the money, close to family. He thinks they can win there. But there was something very wrong with the Eagles team last year from a locker room standpoint, from a production standpoint, from, their quarterback on down. I mean, Jalen Hurts starts with him. And so the two new coordinators, we'll see if they get it right. But no, John, I don't think, I'm not sitting here saying the Eagles are fine off of how horrendously they finished. I mean, impossible to ignore. You got to look at them as a team that's searching for itself right now, if anything. But John, the reality too, though, is that their roster still is that much more talented. Like the Cowboys, for example, compared to the rest of the division, so much more talented across the board, high-end talent, depth, et cetera. Like it's just a fact. So that's part of the reason why Joe Shane always continues to say this is a build, because what he's saying is you can't expect me to have the same level of talent as these other teams overnight. That's what he's saying. So that's the give and take of like why it's still Eagles and Cowboys viewed as cream of the crop in the division, even though the Eagles finished like that. But I share the same skepticism you do, and based on conversations with people in the league. Let's see. Do I think Gary Brightwell will finally have a chance now that Barkley is gone? No. I could be wrong about that. Though Gary does what he's asked and nothing more and nothing less. I always forget that, or not I always forget, but I always thought it was very interesting that game in London in Green Bay when Saquon got hurt, how much, Breda and Brightwell contributed in a big way. I think Gary's a complimentary piece. Like, I don't think he's going to be featured, but, he's proven when he gets a chance, he can chip in. But I don't know. That's, Blue City, they used him more in the return game at first as well as a running back. If he's not contributing in the return game, though, is he really on your as your team just as a special teamer and a backup running back? I guess. I mean, I don't know how many they're going to keep though. But is relatively cheap still. So I'm kind of working this out in my head right now, to be honest with you. I think more likely they continue to, to turn that over, but as long as he's on the roster, no reason to not give him a shot. Joey B says, I love if OBJ would come back, and I think most of us would, just so we have someone to root for on offense. I think we're going to like the defense, but we don't know the other guys. I'm a big Wandale fan, hoping for a big year. So are the Giants. They like him a lot. Kyler says, I'd like to see Phillies skip on a QB and go for Terrion. I like Nick Saban talent over Toledo. Got you. All right. Thank you, Kyler. Maurice says, hey, Pat, new to the channel. Love the stream. Thank you, Maurice. Thanks for saying that. Really appreciate that, and welcome. Welcome to the community, the Talkin Ball community. Let's go. John says, we lost 3 games last year not having Gano or him playing hurt. How is he doing? Any chance of Gates coming back for depth? I do think Gates would be a possibility. We'll see. I mean, I don't know of anything brewing, but I don't see that as out of the question. Graham Gano told me at the end of the season that he was tracking to be ready for the season. I mean, the Giants had told us the same thing about Daniel Jones, but that was what Graham was saying. No, I don't think Fields from the Bears doesn't make any sense to me. Mark says he's surprised by May's low rank. Yeah, you kind of get things all over the board with him as far as what people think, but has high-end talent. Mark says Knights are better for chats. Thank you, Mark. Bill says, I meant Justin Pugh. I watch his podcast a lot. He's into money stuff, real estate investing. It's a good show. Oh, Pugh's great. He's great. Hunter says, I'd rather nighttime, but maybe at like 8 or something, but I'm fine with whatever. Yeah, I got to do later because I just got so much going on in the real world. You got family life and your job, and I got daily news, and I got the podcast, and I'm doing the live chats, and you gotta play, husband and dad and all that, and so you gotta find some me time, some us time. So it has to be a little bit later. Sorry, than 8:00. So that's why 9 works for me. 9:30 tonight because we had a big game. We won, so I had some adrenaline pumping tonight, feeling good. Daddy says. So wait, are we saying Fields is that bad of a player? The Giants didn't even look his way for consideration. I'm saying around the league, people don't think he's very good. Yeah. And I think, as far as like, did people give him consideration? It's like the Bears have him, so they want to get real return for him in a trade. But even if a team has some interest in him, no one is offering the Bears anything close to something that they would accept. And so that's where it's like, okay, well, are you really interested? Because they can't get anybody to bite. Hey, Bill, checking in with a $5 super sticker. Thank you, Bill. Bill says, I like that you do this later. I'm in California, so it's really nice to have someone talking Giants in the evening. Thank you. That's really good perspective, Bill. Bill, it's so fascinating. Like, we have some really good supporters here who check in from other countries, and I always love hearing that different perspective and like recognizing myself, because you don't think of it. You're sitting here talking to people, but you're not seeing them face to face. I'm not seeing you guys on camera where you are. So it's always great to know that and to get to know you guys, because you really are supporting me in coming to these chats and in the super chats, the super stickers, but in just participating. I really do appreciate it, but that's really good insight. Big Z says, are you hearing any other names in free agency? Yeah, nothing percolating at the moment, Big Z. It's been pretty quiet other than the Jack Stoll signing you just saw at tight end. I think if there is another big thing coming, it would probably be contract restructures and one more player. Corner is the position I keep digging it around on because the Giants definitely need to do something there. But obviously that's a position they're going to have to hit in the draft again, even if they do something in free agency. Dan says, and I forgot to put your comment up there, Bill. So thank you so much. Mark says, Dan Saleo, great Philly bloggers, thinks the Eagles will stink as long as Nick Sirianni is the coach. He's certainly got something to prove, man. He's got something to prove. All right. It was interesting this year where there was a long time there where it felt like this guy is going to lose his job. To go back to whose point was that earlier as well, about the Eagles really not being in a great place. Who was that? John P. I mean, you have 3 coaches on the hot seat in the NFC East this year. Nick Sirianni, Mike McCarthy, Brian Daboll. That's a fact. Hunter says, I think it said more about the Eagles than us that last game of the year when Eagles got smacked. We were bad, but they were in such a bad spiral. Yeah. Well said, Hunter. Well said. Really good perspective there. Savage Steve says, any word on Xavier Howard? Banks could really learn from a guy like that. Haven't heard yet about a guy like Howard. That would seem to be a guy who would command some real money that the Giants wouldn't have, and would want to go to a winner. But I'll let you know if I hear. Blue City says, is the running back Jordan Howard still available? Jordan Howard. Wow. I would think he is. Let me see. I haven't heard that name in a hot second. A free agent. How old is he now? Jordan Howard he's only 29. Wow. I guess he's on the Saints. And was he out of football last year? I think he was hurt. Yeah, no word on him. That's funny. I haven't heard his name in a while. Blue City says, do you think QB JJ McCarthy might get drafted by the Giants? I do think that's a possibility. I think it's on the table. Also think the Vikings make sense for JJ. Mitchell says, has anyone asked your thoughts on Eric Gray's role next year? We talked about it briefly, but not just him. I think just like all their draft picks that they saw some promise in when they took them, especially only a second-year player, Gray's a player that you saw late in the season. They started to try to get him going, like in the New Orleans game. When the game was over, they take Saquon out. They start giving Gray some run to see what he can do. They drafted him with the thought that he could help them in the return game. That was a bad evaluation. He is a good, like, one cut and go guy as a running back, or he was in college. Hopefully you can unlock something from him there, because certainly a player like that, if he's not getting a lot of time at running back in the backfield, then he needs to be a productive special teamer or he's not going to play for you. So, like, that's actually where a guy like Brightwell could end up making a team over a draft pick even a year in. Like a guy like Eric Gray is a sense that he's providing value in special teams, whereas Gray is a guy who you're continuing to groom in that role but isn't as reliable there. Christian, thank you, man, for that $5 super chat. I'm late to this live, Pat, but signing Stoll is a sneaky good revenge signing by the Giants. Keep up the great work, and nice to be here for a live. Christian, thanks for thanks for checking in with the $5 super chat. And late or on, early, on time, whatever. We appreciate your support, even if it's for a minute, even if you watch on rewind and you can't make it live. I really thank you a lot. Yeah, it's funny. Even like Drew Lock, you go get Drew Lock as the Giants, and you know what? You know that he's beating the Eagles head to head, right? Because he beat the Eagles down the stretch with the Seahawks last year. Yeah, the sneaky war and the hate, it's the real hate and dislike between the Giants and the Eagles franchises is great. On both ends, like, it's great. They hate each other. And the Eagles, needle the Giants all the time. There's a Devontae Smith trade up. There's tanking to keep the Giants out of the playoffs, all those stuff, they're signing Saquon. And so now you have it's like, oh, where did the idea that the Eagles might have tampered come from, right? And then I thought it was funny. Like, I reached out to the Giants and they, did they talk to the NFL about whether they would investigate this? And they said, well, we know the NFL's aware, but we haven't talked to them any more than that. So it's kind of like, just nudging it along in the right direction. So, I like that rivalry. Not sure Stoll was like hey, let's go screw the Eagles signing. But if it works out like that, hey, it's good for everybody in New York. That's for sure. Let's see. Hunter says it's understandable. Either way, I'd watch 2 a.m. if that's the only time you had to do it. Hunter, you're the man. Hunter says, I love seeing Giants fans all over the U.S. and the world. Yeah, me too. Yanks got some good news. Garrett Cole doesn't need Tommy John surgery. Interesting. I'm going down to spring training next week. Really looking forward to that. See my guy Anthony Volpe down there. Bandit says, what's the trade market looking like for corners? I feel like that's the route we end up going. Interesting. That would be that's certainly something to look at. Initially, I thought about Snead, but he's a guy people maybe have some concerns with the medical. And then also, like, he's probably, you're signing him and paying him, or you're trading for him and pay him, that kind of thing. So that was a name that I thought was one that popped up right away, after the Super Bowl, but made less sense. Mark says there is some dirty secret in their locker room per Soleo. Have you heard of it? About the Eagles. Well, the thing I keep talking about is that, Jalen Hurts is an issue. Like, Jalen Hurts needs to be a better leader. Jalen Hurts needs to be a better player. And I think there's just, when teams struggle, you need the leaders to step to the forefront and hold accountability. And as far as I understand it, there's been a lot of focus on Sirianni needing to shape up and ship up. But I think Hurts, as the leader of the team, locker room, the starting quarterback, I think a lot of people are looking to him as needing to step up and change his ways a little bit to galvanize the team in the right direction. John P says, how should we feel about Joe's drafting so far? It seems like he might be too creative at times. Well, let's see. I lost you there in the queue. You guys still going strong, man, with these questions. Really appreciate you. I do give him a pass on Evan Neal since that pick was pretty much league-wide consensus. A pass on Evan Neal. Wow. John P. Holy cow. You looking for a job? Joe Shane, I think, just jumped through the screen and hugged you for saying that. I think Joe Shane's draft his record is spotty, and I think his top players need to play better. Kayvon finally got some sacks, but his top players, including Neal, need to play better. Deonte Banks showed some real promise. Needs to continue to working at the tackling. I like him a lot. So, but I think Shane has had his fair share of misses, and the offensive line draft in the first year was just a disaster. It just killed last season, basically. Joey B says, "What's the wide receiver situation? Why let Hodgins walk?" He's not in the explosive mold that they want. They want guys who are speedy, get open quick, catch and run, that type of stuff. Though he did help them in the red zone when he got opportunities in both seasons, even though he had fewer opportunities last year. But he kind of got phased out last year. If you noticed in the offense, they only used him really when they had to. But very strange how it was kind of like, hey, that seemed like a successful signing or acquisition by them, kind of a diamond in the rough for the playoff season. And then they didn't really celebrate it or work him in anymore. Hunter says, we always can get Eli Apple. I'm kidding. I don't want him. Yeah, I was just going to say, you better be kidding. Saw Eli in Miami, though. I think it was good for him to go somewhere else. Always good to be in the sun, too. Joey B says, I feel like no one is going to want to play for us with the scrutiny that's happened and what's to come. Yeah, I think it's a challenge for the team. I mean, you are getting some guys to sign, obviously. Players have signed here, so it's not like no one's going to sign here, but I do think it's a reality that, when you're in competition with better run organizations, more successful recently, that type of stuff, it's working against you. Blue City says Eagles have not been beaten the Seahawks since 2008. That's quite a stat. Hunter says, my dad's a diehard Eagles fan. I'm a diehard Giants fan. It's hard here, especially when we play each other. That makes for some fun Sundays. Joey B says, 9 p.m. works best for me because then I can give my undivided attention. Eric says Giants could trade back to 10 and get a Dunze. Should trade back to fill out the offense. Yeah, not impossible. Blue City says my mom was born and raised in Philly, but she's a New York Giants fan. My dad was born and raised in New York, and he's a Cowboys fan. But for me, I'm a Giants fan. Man, there was always when I was growing up too, and I grew up in Philadelphia. I'm sure you guys know, but when I grew up, whether you grew up in New York or wherever it was, New Jersey, wasn't there always one kid in your class or in your grade standing there with his Cowboys jacket on? Just, what are you doing, man? Right? It was always why are you wearing that starter jacket with that stupid star? Why do you root for the Cowboys? You lived in Philly your whole life or New York your whole life. What are you doing? I always like making fun of those guys because they're always the front runners. Daddy says this sucks for us season ticket holders. I feel like every 4 years I'm just giving free money away times 4. You said it, not me. No, I'm not to be mean. But yeah, no, it is unfortunate. Blue City says, how come our players always get injured when they play at MetLife turf? Well, they've changed the turf a couple times now. But to me, it's like, hey, good job trying to get better turf in there and working your way towards grass. But, first of all, the right thing is to go to grass. Secondly, it's just one factor. Like they need to be better about how they manage guys' bodies. Don't put guys back on the field too quickly, all those things. Dad Hat checking in with another $5 super chat. Thank you, Dad Hat. He says, hey, Pat, once you get through training camp, will you give us a real assessment on how we really look, good or bad? Oh, yeah. We're going to do these. We're going to do these during training camp. I'm telling you, like the way that we started these live Q&As and we have this rolling and now the community's building, like one thing I'm going to do is have a more direct way to reach you guys on a consistent basis on your phones. That's another thing to keep an eye out for. Part of maybe like a trial basis, see if that works, potential subscriptions in the future for like exclusive content, depending on how much we continue to build this here. Like I have a lot in the works, a lot of inside, the huddle, inside scoop type stuff, bringing things to you here before I bring it out to anywhere else on social media. Like this is stuff I'm spending a lot of time on. Let's see. All right, we're coming down the home stretch. I'm going to take a few more questions and then jump. It's getting late, and I have to prep my Phil Simms podcast for the morning. Remember to listen to that. I think you'll love it. Or to watch it here on the YouTube channel. I think you'll enjoy it. Yeah, CB2. Don't know exactly yet. They're in the market, though. Eric says consensus is Giants want May. Been to 6 of his games last year. The front office has. Yeah, no, it does feel like he's the guy at 6 if there is a guy. We'll see. Eric says Giants have easy schedule. I think May should start from day one. An easy schedule. I mean, I think, like for example, do they have the Falcons, like the NFC South? So like that, you don't know until these rosters are done assembling really what it looks like, and then you still don't know. They're not a good team though. Like that's the thing. They're not a good team. They need to prove they're a good team before you consider it an easy schedule for a team, if that makes sense. Do I expect a down season compared to this year on Kayvon without Wink being here? That'll be interesting because on the one hand, you're trying to unleash that 4-man pass rush. On the other hand, new coach lost a really good coach. So that's a good question. There were aspects of his game that improved last year and aspects that dipped. Cowboys jacket with the Yankees hat. That's right. Swift's dad would always come into the shop last season. He said in October, Swift couldn't wait to leave because of Hurts. Found that very interesting. Interesting, Bandit. So that's exactly the same stuff I've heard. What shop, Bandit? What are you talking about? A shop that you own, you're saying? Where are you guys at? Chronicle says, what have you heard from your sources? What have you heard working the phones? Well, Chronicles, it's really funny. Like what I started off the podcast here, the live chat talking about was it's funny that John Schneider let the cat out of the bag on Drew Lock being told he had a chance to start, because I just had a couple conversations today with people in the league who I trust about that. And they said the exact same thing to me. Like Drew signed there because he was told he'd have a chance to start and play. And, it was something that I was working on, developing, and rather than just like shooting it out after hearing it in one conversation, right? Because it's like you want to do a little more digging, get the full context, tell the full story. And then seeing that come out and thinking, oh, well, I guess I should have just run with that one. Right. Blue City Empire says, what if Tiki Barber never retired and he won Super Bowl 42 with Eli Manning? Yeah, what if? Could the Giants get Waddle for pick 47? No. Hunter says, I grew up in Patriots country. School logo was a Patriot. One of the only Giants fans. Man, it was tough, but all worth it. Kirko popped his Achilles on grass. Stuff happens sometimes. It's not always the turf. Yeah, right. Yeah, Joey B says he would give away money, not picks. Falcons could be very scary, says Hunter. Agree. We need to do these all year and all season. Sorry, I'm late. Oh, don't worry, Chronicles. Don't worry about it, man. Oh, Joey, I know Joey told me one of these. He said on one of these, that he would be on this every day if we did this every day? How many of you guys would be on this every day if we did it every day? I mean, I think my wife would kill me, but just trying to get your appetite for how often you would do it. I do think that Dane Belton is a guy they're trying to push into that starting role. Jalen Mills there to support that as well as work in a versatile role, helping at corner. But Joey, I agree with you all year, all season. They could still be looking for like a veteran safety as well to help out there. But I do think they're, Belton being a draft pick, they're trying to see what he can do with, added responsibility. Molly Mall says, heard Shane says DJ has been throwing and expects him to throw in the spring. He's still showing belief in DJ, but I guess he's lying. Well, that's the thing. I mean, they're saying he's on track to be ready, and now we hear reports he's not too, so you don't know what to believe. When's the next time Joe will talk to the media? A lot of questions need to be answered by him. We still haven't heard from Dable this offseason, so we'll hear from both of them at the owners' meetings in, I think it's 11 days from now. So very interesting. A lot coming there. I think Isaiah Simmons. I think Isaiah Simmons makes sense for somebody who's going to use him in multiple ways. I'm not sure it's going to be here anymore, but thought he was real. I thought what Wink and his staff did last year with him was really good. Is it possible the Giants cut Daniel Jones this year? Michael, I mean, you're eating a huge salary cap hit by doing that. You're eating dead money into the future. I guess it's more likely what we were talking about earlier, where like, are they with the injuries? Do you try to find a way out of it in like a savvy way? If you're going that route and work like a settlement, whatever it is, but he's not going to give money back, right? Michael, honestly, there's been enough smoke around how negatively they feel about his future that I wouldn't rule anything out. But cutting him and eating all that money to not have him on the roster, I mean, you might as well have him rehabbing and see if he can get back to some form. If they told Locke he had a chance to start, what did sources say? Russell didn't pick the Giants because they told him DJ would start when healthy. Right. That he would essentially be the backup. And like, the difference, there's a difference, Molly Mall, between telling Russell he can compete to be the starter and telling him that he is the starter. Right. So that's the reason. Hunter says 2 times a day he would join, but then Mark says, don't push it. Love it. Yeah, it'd be a lot for me too. Daily would be a lot for me too. But who knows where we're taking this? Chronicle says, that's true, Pat. Got to make time for the family. I would be here every day, though. Love it. Appreciate you. Hunter, I wish higher-ups wouldn't fill us with crap with injuries. Just tell us the truth if he's hurt. That's why I'm here. I'll bring it to you one way or another. Don't worry. How much draft capital will we have to give up to jump to pick number 3? The price for that is considered 3 2s or the equivalent of it, Dad had. That's what the Jets gave up to move up for Darnold a few years ago. Joey B says, you think we trade Daniel Jones at the draft? You think we sit him with all the money we paid him? If they trade him, it could be a trade back. Like I talked to somebody early on in the offseason who suggested that hypothetical, like what if? And, the fact that if you're giving someone that contract and they're taking it off of you, that you're trading it to them and that you're moving your draft capital back to do it. Michael says Denver cut Wilson. Yeah, no, just the idea that when he and the Giants had a meeting is like, well, why would they have the meeting? Number one. And then number two, why wouldn't he sign? You can see there's a difference between, are you competing for the starting job and are you going to be the starter? Guys, you're the best. I love doing these. We're going to wrap up here. We're sponsored by Bet Online and by Estate 98 Coffee. It's an Esencia de Cafe from El Salvador. It dates back to 1798. You guys need to try it. You love it. It takes 3 seconds to make a nice coffee. I drink a ton of coffee. I drink a ton of Estate. I drink it when I do my Talkin Ball podcast during the day. I drink it when I'm writing for the Daily News and making phone calls. I think you'll love it. But love doing these with you guys. Thank you for everybody who joined in. Thanks for the super chats and the super stickers. Doug, the podcast release tomorrow. I think I'm planning on having it up by 8 a.m. So look for it in the morning, like hopefully while you're having your morning coffee or maybe while you're, going for a run or when you're having lunch, plan for it as a lunchtime podcast. Thank you so much, guys. Doug, Chronicles, Hunter, Dad Hat. Maurice, thanks for chiming in, joining the community. This has been another Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard live. We will see you next time, and who knows what news is going to come up next. This was like 10 minutes before we go on air. We're talking Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, and is Daniel even going to be the Giants starter anymore? So who knows what's coming around the pike, but a lot more to come. Talk soon.